Okay. Good evening. And the Platteville Journal, Platteville Area Chamber of Commerce, and the Main Street Program welcome all of you, including the people watching on TV, to the 2013 Platteville Common Council Candidate Forum. These organizations are putting on tonight's forum to help voters make an informed choice in the April 2nd Common Council election. I am, by the way, Steve Prestegard. I'm the editor of the Platteville Journal. And I can tell you that our intention tonight is to guide a conversation among the 5 candidates into issues that have come up in the Common Council campaign and how these candidates feel about these issues. The questions were raised during journal coverage of the campaign, as well as emailed questions and questions I was asked to submit from Platteville Journal readers. We will start tonight by briefly introducing the 5 candidates and asking them what they feel the most important issue of this campaign is, and we'll conclude by asking each candidate why we voters should vote for them. In between, we will cover the issues in this campaign and perhaps even issues the candidates themselves bring up. There are no formal time limits for answers, but I am asking the candidates to answer completely but succinctly. And I guess we'll just start with that. There are 2 races, 1 at-large seat and 1 seat in District 1, which is, based on what the map looks like, best described probably as Northeast Platteville. All city voters are able to vote for the at-large seat, and those 3 candidates are stage left, my right. And the candidates are, starting at the end, Alderman Steve Becker, who is running for his 3rd term on the Common Council. He is a retired professor from UW-Platteville. Next to him is Michael Den, who is making his first run for elective office. He is retired from John Deere. He previously served on the Plan Commission and the Park Board. Zan Shields is a write-in candidate who ran for Common Council last year for the at-large seat. She is a caterer. She previously served on the City Arts Board. Now, those who live in District 1 will be able to vote for one of these 2 candidates over here. Alderman Michael Dalecki is running for his 2nd term in this state office. He was also on the council from 1994 to 2000. He is, of course, the president of the Common Council. He is a professor at UW-Platteville. And Barb Stockhausen is making her first run for office. She is the owner of H&R Block here in Platteville. Now that I have briefly introduced the candidates, it's time for the candidates to introduce themselves and answer the question of why they're running, essentially what they think is important. So I will ask question number 1, what do you believe is the most important issue in this campaign, and what is your position on it? And we'll start with Steve Becker.
Okay, well, thanks for having this open forum, giving us all a chance to talk about what our thoughts are, and thanks to everybody for giving up basketball tonight and coming out to see us. As far as the most important issue, I'm looking at it, Platteville's been a boom. I think we'll all agree that Platteville's been a boom town the last few years. We've got good economic growth. We've held the line in taxes. I think most of you, if you're a taxpayer, you'll know that when you look at your property tax bill, they haven't gone up for the last 5 or 6 years, unless you did some major improvements yourself. And the biggest thing facing this is how are we going to continue our growth in the city and finance our growth in the city, particularly when we look at our operating expenses. How are we going to keep our operating expenses down without raising taxes? How are we going to have economic growth, particularly out in the industrial park, without raising taxes? So economic growth, keeping the tax down. Another major issue that I feel very important, we all know that our growth in the city of Platteville, to a large extent, is driven, whether you like it or not, by the university. The university's had a big growth in the last few years. They're planning future growth, and we're going to have to deal with some of the benefits of that growth and some of the problems with the growth. So how we're going to face that's going to be a major topic for us. The third thing that we're going to have to look at is how are we going to pay for this economic expansion. We're getting in a situation where what we've used in the past for our growth out in the industrial park has been TIFs. If not, there's not some major changes, we're going to be running out of TIF money to finance that economic growth. So this is going to be a challenge for us in how we're going to do that.
Steve, thank you. Michael Den.
Thank you
What is the most, as far as you're concerned, what's the most important issue in this campaign, and what's your take on it?
Thank you for having me. I want to start out a little bit with you folks. So that I'm here at a little bit of a disadvantage because I don't have the information that Mr. Becker or Mr. Delecky will have. If you have questions, I'll be more than happy to research them and find out and get an educated answer for you. But I'll answer these questions as best that I can. My point is right now, one of the most important things is we need to get the city back to a 40-hour work week. The police department does not need to be closed on Friday, and neither does City Hall. Okay? With that, people are going to say, well, where's the money? Where's the money? According to Mr. Delecky at one point in time, he made a comment that $107,000 was saved by cutting back on these hours. I asked Mr. Becker about that, and he said, yes, but we're only spending $5,000 more. So I said, well, if we're saving $107,000, then that should be here to use. Well, no, we're spending that. Well, apparently it was used for some other jobs that maybe the city doesn't really need at this point in time, okay? Now, I think that there is money to put people back to work without raising taxes or anything else, okay? There's been a change in the way we do the garbage pickup, okay? Actually, not the pickup, but the way it's priced and the build out. There's $72 for every household. There's 3,000 tax bills sent out. That $72 was used from the general tax pool to pay for your garbage, okay? That money is still there, and if we're doing a line item now paying for our garbage, that money is still there, okay? It doesn't need to be used for more ridiculous other salaried positions, shall we say. That can be used to put everybody back to work. Now, I'm sure that somewhere down the line, somebody has an idea of what they already want to do with that money. But my opinion is we can put people back to work with that. Now, as far as the TIFs are concerned, I did a little research, and I really am not a favor of TIFs. The problem of it is, let me give you these examples, and I'll lead up to why I'm saying this. The Platteville Development Corporation just received $350,000 from Mr. Karpinski for 1.75 acres. The new carpet distributor out there, they paid $90,000 for that lot. Heartland Credit Union for 1.4 acres sold to O'Reilly Automotive Incorporated for $185,000. What all this is leading up to is if that land is all valuable and worth that much, Walmart paid $1,233,600 for their 25 acres. Menards paid $2,650,700 for their 17 acres. The National Bank paid $565,000 for 2.6 acres, okay? All that development land is worth all that money. Then why is the city sitting around and giving 20 acres to a cheese factory for $20, okay? There's a lot of value out here that we could be receiving and still be bringing jobs in. The argument against that is, oh, we wouldn't bring anybody in here. Well, we need to bring jobs in here, but $8 an hour jobs don't do us any good. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. Zan Shields.
Yes, I would be the different candidate. I believe I would be the candidate that is for the city, more or less like growing its own business. I look around in the city, there's not much here for children to do, underage children that is, and we are at a point right now where we have a lot of underage drinking that's going on in the town. I feel to believe that if the city went into business for itself, it could open something like a skating rink, some type of complex or a teen center for kids, community center, that would solve some of the problems that you're having with underage drinking and some of the vandalism and kids being picked up by police officers. I'm also a candidate that believe in listening to people. I listen to all sorts of people when I'm outside. I would be the candidate that would be the people person. I do also know about the people that works for the city. I don't agree with the raw deal that they have, that they got. I also believe that there was a job that was placed out there for $44,000 a year after these people got a cut in pay and in hours. The city needs to go into conjunction with the university There are graphic design majors at the university that could very well have taken that position. And they can do many other positions like on an internship level. And basically, that's it for now.
Okay, thank you, Zan. Mike Dalecki, what do you believe is the most important issue in this campaign, and what's your position on it?
Steve, thanks for being here tonight, and we all get to sit for a long time, and you get to stand, and I appreciate your willingness to do that. Welcome to everybody. I'm glad that you're either listening in or that you're here, and it shows that people are taking an interest in what's happening in their city government, and that they're trying to make an informed decision about what to do. I've maintained for the last 3 years that our economic situation is the most important kind of problem that we face. And a lot of things roll into that. We're running out of borrowing capacity. Up until very recently, we spent most of our borrowing capacity on arranging for roads to be done. We're not going to be able to do that forever. We have a sustainability problem in that over time, we're not going to find ourselves able, if we keep borrowing, to make payments on that and maintain the kind of normal stewardship of the roads and other kinds of infrastructure that we have in the city of Platteville. Stewardship's important. Taxpayers trust us to spend their money well. And I think we've done a really good job doing that. We've been very careful in what we have spent it on. We have cut back unnecessary spending, and we have redirected that money toward capital expenditures so we don't have to borrow it. Most people here have to live within a budget. You can't just spend because it feels good. The city should operate the same way. So coming out of the recession of 2008, 2009, 2010, I was very concerned about the position of our city. We lost a lot of state funding during the budget crisis. A lot of problems emerged from that, and we were able to weather this storm very well. And I believe that a lot of that has to do with our being very careful as economic stewards. It's not my money, it's not other people's money, it's the taxpayers' money. We ought to spend it like it belongs to them and not to someone else. And so my argument is that our most important thing right now is to continue to right the ship. We can't keep doing what we've been doing. We've got to find ways to fix that without digging in the taxpayer's pocket to do it.
Mike, thank you. Barb Stockhausen, what do you believe is the most important issue in this campaign, and how do you feel about it?
Well, everyone here has talked about taxes, but I also think it's the representation of District 1, where I live and have for the last 33 years, and I feel strong that that's my job. Now, we have subsidized housing in my area. We have people who have lived there a long time. I live right in the middle of the district. I have seen changes happen that I think are important. And yes, all my other candidates here realize that the tax base has to change to be proactive. But we also have to be part of the community. And there's many opportunities out there that we can use that are not part of the tax structure. I think we have good people that could help with costs. And I look at the people around this community and those that are present, and they're willing to work. They're willing to work to make this community better. And yes, the tax structure will change a little. I think we've mentioned it at many of the different council meetings. Obviously, trash has come up, garbage has come up, parking has come up. Those are minimal expense when you look at the grand scheme of things. Income, I think, is also minimal. I think we need to look at the bigger picture. In our district, because there's subsidized housing, the tax base is a little different. And yes, you'd have to bring that to the whole city. And I feel we can do that with good conversation, with talking to our constituents. And I think I'm willing to do that and visit with everyone and bring that information into my campaign.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you for answering the first question. So let's move on and get into the meaty stuff, shall we say. I'm going to start this second question with you, Mike. It's a subject that's come up over at least the nearly year that I've been here, and I understand it's a subject that's come up before I was here. And it is the question of, for lack of a better term, decorum and respect among members of the city council, as well as the relationship between the city council and constituents. There have been complaints about that. There are others who think that that issue is kind of overblown. And I guess my question is that a problem, or is it not a problem in your opinion?
In my opinion, I feel that it is. People should be able to come before the common council, or the city council, however you want, and feel comfortable to talk, to view their points of view, to not worry about being interrupted when they're here talking, not having people making facial gestures, intimidating methods, interruptions. If they have a 5-minute speech, that's their turn, their 5 minutes. It's not anybody else's. And that's a real problem here. It's been here. I've been in city council meetings when I've seen it happen. We need to have more of a decorum between the council members. When we talk, we treat them with the same respect we'd want to be treated with, not belittled or in private meetings kind of be, I would say overshadowed in some of the comments and feel uncomfortable. This needs to be a friendly atmosphere to work with a small community, and we need to work together. Anybody should feel comfortable coming before this council, and it's not the case.
Zan Shields, do you believe decorum and perceived respect is an issue between the city council and other, or people in the city council?
I have not witnessed it myself, but I have heard the issues that people have been disrespected, especially during the times of the parking ordeal that was going on. But I myself, I have not witnessed it.
Okay, Mike.
Thank you. I think there are really two issues here. There have been a number of times at city council meetings where we have been interrupted by catcalls from the audience, shouts. In fact, there was one individual who was apparently so unable to control himself that twice I had to stop the meeting in order for him to compose himself. That's not a city council problem. That's some other kind of problem. I also think that sometimes there's this sense that if people offer an opinion that it should be accepted as true, and I'm not sure that's always the case. I personally have a reputation for being a pretty direct fellow, in the sense that you're going to get kind of an honest view of what things are from me. And that's being forthright. It's being transparent. It's being honest. It's being direct. I don't think people should be lied to. I don't think they should be dealt with in a condescending fashion, or that we somehow look at them as if somehow we're not going to pay attention to them. Most of whatever I hear is going on with this, I'm thinking to myself, as council members, we disagree among ourselves, and we've had words from time to time, but that's what passionate people do when they believe in what they believe. And to argue that somehow that passion should be subordinated to some other kind of standard doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I'm really wondering what it is that people want if it's not honesty and not directness and not effectiveness. And I think we've been all of those things.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Barb?
Well, I give one incident, Mike, and that is to tell the police that it cost $300,000 to police 2nd Street. Now, I know there's a cost for police. We all know it costs police coverage. But I felt it came quick and fast and without the needs toward the business owners. Now, I'm a business owner, and business owners bring tax money to the community. They hire staff. Those people spend money. There is a circle of spending within the community, and we need to understand that as terms of what the businesses are doing. And I felt really strongly about that experience at that moment. So that kind of experience, and I realized that was a work session, it wasn't at the regular council meeting, but still, figures have to be available. I just felt very strongly at that moment that had to be a controlling moment for
Barb,
you.
excuse me, sorry about that. Barb, thank you. And finally, Steve.
Well, thanks. I'm probably one of the nicest guys in town here. I mean, I listen to everybody. Two things. Relations between the council. First off, I've been in a lot of work sessions here between the seven of us, and believe me, there's nobody sitting around being intimidated by anybody else. Everybody has their own say, and there's a good give and take. Which is the way it should be, and we don't all agree. And sometimes when we are on an issue, maybe it's a 3-4 split. Sometimes it's a 5-2. Sometimes it's 7-0. But I'll tell you one thing: when it's all said and done, and I think this is the way it should be, when we shut off the lights and we walk out the door, nobody's mad at each other. Okay, we've got disagreements, sure. You got give and take. Don't you want that? That's what we should have. That's how we get things accomplished. That's how we look at it. So I think the council members get along fine. We got a good group, and I read in the paper once that you got to give and take a little bit. Well, believe me, I am not always on the winning side of a lot of issues, and that's just the way life is. I've been facing that type of challenge for many years. Sometimes on the winning side, sometimes I'm not. So I think we get along fine. I think we have a good group, a good working group, and hopefully it will continue. Now, as far as do we listen to people? Boy, if you look at some of the issues that we dealt with in the last couple of years, we really do listen to people. Look at how long it takes us to finally make a decision. Now, if we weren't listening to anybody, we'd just make that decision, and that's all there would be. Take, for example, 1075 West Main, okay? We put up some apartment buildings over there. You know how many years it took for that project to finally get approved by the city council? It was about a 5-year proposal. The proposals came in, there must have been 5 or 6 different proposals from what they originally started with. First, they were going to have 2 apartment buildings there. The neighbors came in and said, "Yeah, that's crazy." Okay. We backed off. The city council listened to what the neighbors said, and we came up with a pretty good compromise. We developed some land. I think the neighbors are pretty happy. We put in some rules that would protect the neighborhood. That's what it's all about. It took us a lot of years to do that. Parking. Everybody's been talking about parking. Well, okay. Again, we talked it, and we get jokes about how much time we spend talking about it. But I'll bet you if you go talk to the neighbors over there that are living around Roundtree Commons now, and I've talked to a lot of my friends, and what they're going to tell you, this is the best it's ever been. They don't have any trouble parking at all. I had a guy do we listen to people? I had a guy in my house at 8 o'clock this morning talking to me about a problem he was having with parking. Car sitting in front of his house. Been there since it snowed. He wasn't getting the kind of action he wanted. Okay, well, 8 o'clock in the morning, I sat and spent a half hour talking to him, and he's right. He had a legitimate gripe. As a council member, we listen to that, we pass it on to the appropriate people, and we resolve that by noon. Okay, that's what it's all about. There's a lot of give and take. Sometimes we don't agree, but a lot of times we do.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to question number 3. We're going to start with Zan. It is sort of tied to that, but it's not a question of style, I guess, but a question of results. So the question is, does the Common Council adequately manage city government, or does it not adequately govern city management? And the specific issue I'm referring to is the question, I've heard this from various people, about the city council's micromanaging operations of the city and not allowing managers and committees to do their work. So is the city council properly managing city government or not?
I believe it micromanages too much. I feel that when the city manager comes up with something and he gives a suggestion or something that he's implemented and put in place, I think it should basically lie there and rest with the city manager. Because after all, he is the city manager. And that's what he's paid to do, is manage the city. I don't believe that the last decision should rest with 7 people. I just don't believe that at all.
Thank you, Zan. Mike?
Well, you're always going to have difficulties with various circumstances. Nothing runs perfectly. The city manager is, in essence, the chief executive officer of an $8 million to $17 million business, depending on how you want to include capital in there. And his job is to implement the policies of the council as we set them up. This is a representative democracy right here, and the 7 members of the council, for better or worse, are the ones charged with making the policy decisions that guide this town. And we listen to people, we try to hear what's going on, we listen for ideas, but in the end, the city manager has to manage within the criteria of those policies that we set. We need to be strategic. I'm not sure there's that much micromanaging. I'm not sure where that's coming from, that there's a lot of micromanaging. Because I'm sure not doing very much of it. I don't want to do it, and I know Steve doesn't do it, so it's not clear to me where that charge is coming from. Not clear to me also that we've had any great difficulties with what's going on. I think the city runs generally fairly well. I'll probably address this later on, but I think you look at results, and the results have been fabulous. And since that's the case, I would suggest that maybe the management structure is pretty good. And I wouldn't fool with it much.
Thanks, Mike. Barb?
Well, I think it is micromanaged. I think we need to more adequately use the committees and commissions, have them debate, come up with the resolution, and present. I think sometimes the issues do come before the council, and I don't think they quickly go back to the committees. And I don't think, as much as we tell the city manager to do his job, many times the job is taken from him and done at the council level. That is not their job. Their job, yes, is to answer the question from the committee, but to do the committee work before it goes back to the committee, I basically don't appreciate. At this point, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Barb. Steve?
Well, I'm a guy that sure doesn't want to micromanage the city. We get done with a regular city council meeting at 9 o'clock or 9:30. The last thing I want to do is spend 2 hours sitting in a work session talking about trying to tell the city manager what he's supposed to do for his job. When I look at the paper and I look at some of the things people say, half the people are saying, you're not watching the city manager enough. The other half are saying, you're spending too much time watching the city manager. I don't know. I don't think we do. I think the city manager's done a good job. From my standpoint, the last thing I want to do is micromanage what the city does. I'm not getting, that's not my job. That isn't what I got elected to do. What I think we do with them, and I think we've been successful, is take the budget, for example. What do? We said, okay, city manager, we need to look at how we can reduce some operating expenses. Your job is to get out there, figure this out, and bring us some recommendations, what we do. And he did that. He came through with like 25 of them. Then we start sitting down, going through each one, discussing them with it. Now, if you call that micromanaging, that's what we're going to do. But that's what we should be doing. As far as the committee work goes, I'll bet you that 90%, at least 90% of the recommendations that come from the Planning Commission, every one of these commissions they're an easy vote. Everybody takes the recommendation and it's an easy yes vote, at least 90%. The only time you get a little problem is that if you get some people coming in and they're disagreeing with what that particular committee says, then we have to spend a little more time discussing it.
All right, Steve. Finally, Mike.
I'll make this short because I actually don't have any knowledge of all of what's micromanaged and what isn't. And I can't answer that question. I'll be honest with you. I do not know.
Okay. Thank you for answering, all of you. And we move on to the next question, which is about city services. The question is tied to what was mentioned before about the 40-hour work week or 37-hour work week, having City Hall open on Fridays or not, but also about stewardship of our tax dollars. So the question, we'll start with Mike. Are city services adequately provided for their cost or not? And if they are not, in your opinion, what needs to change?
It's a great question, Steve.
Thanks.
You know, when we got hit with the state cuts a few years ago, not a pleasant time to be on the city council, and certainly not a pleasant time for anybody who took those hits. I work for the university, we took a big hit. My wife works for the school district, big hit. So I can empathize very well with people who had that kind of circumstance. And certainly when the city government took their cut from the state and we were left trying to figure out what to do with it, it was clear we were going to have to make some changes. And we did an awful lot of soul searching and hand wringing because we knew that it wasn't going to be pleasant, and there are people's lives influenced by this. And for anyone who thinks these decisions come easy to us, I guarantee you 7 people lost sleep over this. I lost a lot of sleep over it because it is not an easy thing. One of the things we were able to do was to save every job. No one was laid off. All the benefits retained. Health insurance, retirement benefits retained. Unfortunately, we cut back to 37 hours a week, which was unfortunate, but along the line, something else came. And this is a difficult thing to kind of discuss because it sounds like it's uncivil. But when we went from 40 to 37 hours, I was really concerned that we would lose important city services. So I watched and I listened really carefully to see if we were not getting things done that we needed to get done. The only person who said anything to me was one person who mentioned he wished that City Hall was still open on Fridays, and that person doesn't live in Platteville. And I looked to see if the roads were still being plowed, and they were, and the parks being mowed, and they were, and City Hall work still getting done. And I had to step back, and this is the part of this that involves the honesty thing. If we go back to 40 hours, what are they going to do? Because we're obviously getting the work done in 37. Now, I personally am sympathetic to the issue of pay, and I would love to see people get back to 40 hours. But I believe we're going to have to find some ways through attrition and other things to move those hours back up. To just turn around and say we're going to pay people 3 more hours a week and it's not obvious there's any more work to do, I don't understand that. And I hope someone can explain that to me if in fact that's not the correct view. But we all, I think, stepped back and said, oh my gosh, were we overpaying for hours or are we overstaffed? And again, my hope is we'll come down to a point where we can gain hours back so people can go back to 40. But in the meantime, where will that money come from? And is that really good stewardship of tax dollars? I don't believe it is. Thank you.
Ike, thank you. Barb?
Well, everyone knows that that was my platform, and I still stand by it. I think we need 40 hours work week staff. Now, I also feel that the City Hall needs to be open 5 days. Business hours, businesses run on a 5-day week. And there's nothing worse than trying to do business on a Friday, which is when most businesses do business, because it's easier to have the time. I'm one of those people. I leave my office, I have a staff person there, and I do my errands. I also think people do complete more work in a 40-hour work week. And they also have a better understanding, a comfort, love of the community, if you want to say it. And through the proper management that we've talked about, I think more work will get done. And so I am definitely one of the people we're talking about that has mentioned it, and I will continue to mention it as part of my platform that we have those 2 services returned.
Barb, thank you. Steve?
2 questions. Are we a good steward of the tax dollar? I think we are, and I can certainly spend a lot of time giving you examples of why we are. But right now, it seems like a lot of discussion is hinging on this question of 37 hours versus 40 hours for our for the work week, and both for the hourly employees and not having City Hall open. Yeah, I guess it'd be wonderful to have everybody working 40 hours a week, and it'd be wonderful to have the City Hall open 37 or 40 hours a week. The question really comes down is how are you going to pay for it? One of the reasons we're in this predicament is because we lost state dollars. I mean, our budget went down, the city budget dropped down. If the state was pumping money in it, we wouldn't have had to face this decision. But we did have to face the decision. We had to make some tough decisions. Now, if you're going to finance, if you're going to save money, where are you going to save it? You know what percent of our operating budget is wages and fringe benefits? 67% of the operating budget for the city of Platteville every year consists of paying wages and the related fringe benefits. 67%. Now, you can spend a lot of time looking for $5,000 here, $5,000 there on cutting the program back here and there, but where are the dollars? The dollars are in that 67%. So that's where we had to look. Got to remember, this wasn't one person's decision. This was 7 people on the city council, along with the city management, that decided we're going to have to reduce some salary dollars somehow. Now, how are we going to do it? Well, really, there's only 3 ways you can do it. One, you can give furlough days. Okay, that's what the state did. They gave furlough days. When I was working at the university, the state, last year I worked there, the state gave us 8 furlough days. And they said, okay, you're just not going to get paid for those days. Now, some people would like to have that. Now, when I didn't get paid for those days, I still had to prepare for class. I still did the same thing I always did. Didn't make any difference. I just didn't get paid for it. That was one way that you could save some salary dollars, is by furlough days. We actually did that in the city for a while the first year. The second way you can do it is you can just lay people off. Okay, so you got 60 employees out there. You can say, okay, we're going to get rid of 10 of you. Okay, you're done. You don't have a place to work anymore. That's the other way you can save money. Now, you want to do it that way? The third way you save money is what? It's what we did. We sort of backed everybody off. Everybody got a few hours reduction. They went from 40 hours to 37 hours. We made an effort. We said that we're not going to lay anybody off. Any changes, reduction in employment is going to come through attrition. In other words, when people retire, we're going to look at that position and ask ourselves, do we need to refill that position? Or should it be combined some way? The city council happened to think that was the best way to approach it. Now, some people don't agree with that, but it's reality.
Steve, thank you. Mike?
And Steve, you're right. It comes back to this 40-hour thing quite a bit. I still believe that we should have the 40-hour work week. I really do. The money that you saved by doing this, if you still had it someplace and were going to use it, would be wonderful. But you turned them around and immediately hired some more positions that the city has never had before. Why does the city manager need an assistant? I go back clear to the days of one of the mayors I knew in town, okay? Now, all the time through all this thing, we have not had an assistant city manager. We don't need that. If he can't do his job, then we get somebody else that can. It's that simple. It shows his incompetence if he has to have somebody else do his work for him, okay? Now, I have one other quick question. You talk about saving money for the city. Why is the city going to write a $2 million grant and give that money to the cheese factory? I ask, where's that money coming from? We're going to borrow this money and write a grant and give it to the cheese factory. Gee, I bet we could use a lot of that $2 million here to take care of things in the city.
Mike, thank you. Zan?
I stand by the 40-hour work week also. I don't like seeing people where they're losing part of their income. As having spoken to quite a few people that works for the city, it was a hard hit for them. And I just think that there was another way of doing this. Also, I hope when the city comes back that there is a recourse and that those people are made whole by having that pay come back to them. There are single women that works in city operations. They can't afford that. There are men that takes care of their families. They're the meat and potatoes of their, of the community. I just don't understand taking the money away from them. I disagree.
Okay, thank you. We're going to switch directions, but still maintain a city operations question here. And this has come up over the past few months. There was some mention of employment plans, and there have been some positions whose funding has been shifted from property taxes to water and sewer fees in part. There is, of course, the $60 per household garbage fee that started at the beginning of this year. There was a proposal for a brush collection fee, which was defeated. Actually, at the last meeting, there have been other user fees that have been talked about. And so that is the question. And I'll start with Barb for this. Do you support the switch of funding for city services from property taxes to fees and other funding sources or not?
No, I don't. I think that's another one of those micromanaging issues that needs to be evaluated. The question, number one, is I don't know, and I will be the first to admit, I don't know if those fees are based on household. I'm talking about garbage collection now. Household or parcels. I had the unfortunate experience of having somebody approach me and state she got a $120 bill. She didn't know she had 2 parcels on her property. And for 20 years, she only had 1 garbage pickup. So that's an issue I need to investigate, as Mike has said, something that needs to be investigated. The other bills need to be evaluated based on other income coming in. I think each homeowner needs to have the service they need. But I will admit there have been some comments that I found very pleasing about neighbors helping neighbors. I'm fortunate. I do have neighbors helping me on occasion, many times, most of the time. And that's certainly a wonderful option. But the services still have to be maintained. And I think losing those are one of our most precious situations that needs to be reviewed again.
Barb, thank you. Mike Dalecki.
Would you repeat the question?
Sure.
please?
Do you support the switch of funding for city services from property taxes to other funding sources? And that could include water and sewer fees, the garbage fee going directly to households, the proposed brush fee, those sorts of user fee kinds of funding.
Some yes, some no. Here's why. In this day and age, I don't look at very many city council decisions that don't go through the lens of budget. We have to maintain some level of core services in this city, both things like police, fire, and ambulance, and water and sewer and streets and so on, the things nobody thinks about very much, but also the kinds of services that make this a nice place to live. We've got a nice library, we've got wonderful parks, we've got recreation programs, we've got a senior center that's important in so many people's lives, and that's part of what makes this a great place to live, is those kinds of services. We still face serious funding problems in this town. I think we're doing a lot better than a lot of places are, but we're going to run out of money to do certain things. It's not sustainable, and I think we need to look at services that are nice but not absolutely necessary. Certain services are maybe things that we could share a little bit. We could take some of that funding pressure off the budget and maybe do some of them ourselves. And I'll note one thing, Steve, that when that budget came out and we were putting the garbage tax on there, I didn't vote for it, Steve didn't vote for it, neither of us did, because we did not like that. I think that that's kind of a stealth tax in a way, and I think we ought to be looking at ways for people to be able to do things more on their own. It's nice if we can get the city to pay for everything, but I don't see where the money's going to come from forever and ever and ever. We're going to have to find some ways to change some things. And I think, frankly, having neighbors work with each other to maybe help each other do some things like pick up some sticks and take some things to the recycling site, I don't think that's a bad thing in the long run. And in the end, the only way I can see for us to preserve our core services, the ones that make this a great place to live, is to make sure that budget is sustainable for the long run. If we don't do that, we're all going to be pretty unhappy before too long. Thank you.
Mike, thanks. Zan, do you support the switch of funding for city services from property taxes to other funding sources or not?
I do not. Just plain flat, I do not.
Maybe you'd like to elaborate, or is that?
I just think that charging fees for garbage and the pickup, you already pay a lot of service charges. Every time I turn around, there's a service charge. Service charge on the water, service charge on the sewer. There's always a service charge. Certainly those service charges must help for something.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
I do, pardon me, I do not, because what happens, the tax base is not gonna change. You're not gonna lower my taxes because I'm paying for things on fee basis, okay? Fees can be raised real easy. You don't need much of an authority to raise a fee, okay? So I could see, okay, we take it off the tax rolls, that stays the same, I'm paying this much. Now all of a sudden, every so often, the fees go up a little bit more and a little bit more. It's a form of increased taxes. It's not called taxes, but you're paying more. So I'm sorry, I'm not in favor of that.
Okay, Steve.
Well, unfortunately, the people that proposed this little fee aren't running for reelection. I am, and even if I wasn't, I was against the increase, particularly the $60 charge for a garbage fee. And if you have a duplex, I mean, that $60 went on every single house and duplex. That's who got it. Apartment buildings, it didn't have any effect on them. Just the single units in apartment buildings. So if you had apartment building, you got two duplex, you got hit for 120. If it was a single unit, you got hit for $60. As Barb knows, the worst thing about it is you can't even deduct it on your tax return. It's not deductible. Fee's not deductible. Barb knows that, pointed that out once before. And as an accountant who, does do a lot with taxes, I mean, that was what really hurt me when I thought they were going to do that. Why do we do it? Well, I mean, Mike's right. It's a sleight of hand. We did this a few years ago. If you recall, maybe about 5 years ago, we took part of the police and fire protection off of the tax bill and we threw it on the water bill. So this is something that's been going on for quite some time. This $60 fee, one of the arguments for it is that we always get this complaint in the city of Platteville that, gee, the taxes are high in the city of Platteville compared to this other taxing entity. Well, you know what? A lot of those other taxing entities charge this fee. They don't put it on the tax bill. Take the township of Platteville. They've had a fee on there for garbage pickup for 20 years. Okay, so their taxes are lower there, but they also have more fees that they pay for. So one of the thoughts is to say to the taxpayer, if you put it on a fee, and then they're not going to look at that number and look at that their taxes went up. The worst thing about this last tax increase that I didn't like, and it happened right in the budget hearing in the city council meeting, was that when we made some changes and we saved some money in taxes. Okay, so we took the $60 off this line, put it over here, and we saved a little money. Some people in the city council said, oh, good, we got extra money, let's spend it. I wasn't one of those. But that's the way some people look at it, is you save a little money here, then we can spend it somewhere else. So I'm against it, if you can't tell.
Thank you. Let's move on to a subject that is a policy issue, but it's not about city government operation. And it is a question that has come up in the last maybe month, 6 weeks or so that the city council's been discussing, And that is there a major problem emanating from 2nd Street? And I had somebody ask if the solution to 2nd Street problems are in such areas as foot patrol for police officers, blocking off or restricting parking on 2nd Street, enforcing current laws more, restricting 2nd Street parking on a couple nights a week. There's the list of the 17 suggestions that the city manager and the bar owners came up with. And so I'm interested in your take on that. We'll start with Mike.
Thank you, Steve. 2nd Street is an interesting issue. Number of years ago, when the number of students in Platteville at the college was about 4,500, I think manageable. Today we have 7,800. I think most students are not a problem. Vast majority of them are not a problem. But when you increase the number of students by the amount we did, you also increase the number of students who are likely to be problematic, as well as other people. I've gotten a number of complaints from people, and while it's true that there are business owners on 2nd Street, the rest of the business owners downtown should not have to suffer because we have a 2nd Street. In fact, when you have broken windows and other kinds of property damage repeatedly and continuously from what happens on 2nd Street, we have a problem. And I think we ought to look at that and figure out what to do about it. One of the concerns I have about this is it cost us a lot of money to be able to deal with Second Street. I don't know what the exact number is. Barb said, I said 300,000, I said 100,000. I think it's probably in that range. It's not only direct cost of the police being down there, it's lost time when they're injured in a fight, and now we have to pay overtime to someone else to fill in for them. It's time spent going to Lancaster in order to testify at trials. It's all the administrative costs. There's a whole lot of stuff that we all pay. Every one of us pays this in order to have Second Street managed. And the benefits of Second Street go to a very few people, but we socialize the cost. In other words, we all bear the cost, but the benefit goes to very few people. And I don't see any place else in town where we have that kind of thing. And it bothers me that in this era of budget problems, that we're spending that much money to benefit that few people at everyone else's expense. I'd love to have that money so I could put that toward capital so that we borrow that much less and do that much more good on road repair and replacement. But right now it's going there. And so we need to do one of two things. I believe we either have to have the Second Street bar owners and those downtown who are part of this, I'm not sure if it's possible to do this legally, but have them support the cost of managing that area, or find some other mechanisms to greatly reduce what these problems are. We've gone through a host of ideas, just in case anybody's interested. Some people would say close the bars earlier. We looked at that. Can't do it by law. We thought about different differential kinds of liquor license fees, where if you're open after a certain amount of hours, the liquor license is far more expensive, so we could cover the cost. We can't do that either. There are a lot of good ideas people have had that we just can't do by law. And so we're still kind of looking here for ways to either reduce the policing need or find some way to recover that cost, because I don't think it ought to be coming out of your pockets, and I don't think it should be coming out of anyone else's who's not benefiting from that.
Mike, thank you. Zan, Second Street a problem?
Yes, it is. As everyone know, I work on Second Street. There's a lot of fighting, people that are overly inebriated. There is now a new problem that has come to Second Street. It's that you have like about 200 people that are not students that now comes into town. Why, I don't know. And they come from areas such as the south side of Chicago, Dubuque. I talked to them, asked them, why would you come here to go to a bar when they are just really nice bars in Chicago? The fights break out, and to me, no one has to ask the question as to why they're there. It's quite obvious why they're there. They're there because there are people that's there that needs their services. And then also they're there because when you have a bar and the bar just caters to certain things, and you have patrons that go in this bar and act a certain way, then that is a problem. That is a problem. And that is a problem that the owner and their staff needs to work out. Because people tend to follow the ways of the bars. You have the annex on the highway. The same people that goes downtown are the same people that goes to the annex. There are no fights at the annex. There's not a problem because that bar owner has a certain attitude. And when you come into that place, you will comply with that attitude. There are no lots of bouncers outside. There's none of that out there. And then it's a problem because if a guy goes into a place, and I will name it, that's called Schoolgirls, well, when he starts to drink, he's not thinking about going to church, a church service on Sunday. They're thinking one thing. And the name is pornographic. It deals a connotation. I have spoken about the name of the bar. I asked the owner to please change the name of the bar, maybe call it Cocktails or something like that, and that would make a difference. But the people that are now coming into this town, it's dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's dangerous for students. basically, to be there. Because when you come and I hear things like 20 gauge shotgun in my truck, well, now it's time for me, to run to the side somewhere and try to get the police to come out to see what's going on. And like I said, well, there's a drug problem in this town. And if they're coming, when people come all the way from Chicago or in the tri-state areas of Dubuque, you're coming because you have product. And your product is being moved. And whether they want to say it or not, there are students here that uses drugs amongst, other people that are in the town. But it does cause a problem. And then if you have a rival gang and a bar, and that problem breaks out, that's a bad thing. That's a very bad thing. And another thing is, like, if you have bartenders, you have to set the climate again for the bar. If you have bartenders that are feeling a female up and down, well then, what do you expect for the patrons that are in the bar? The whole scene of the bar, the education of it, it needs to be changed. They need to be talked to because it's not good. It's not good at all. And it's not all the students. It's just a few. I meet a lot of students. I talk to students all the time. And most of them are very courteous, polite, very well raised, very well behaved. Some of them even talk to their peers and tell them, don't do that. That's wrong. They don't all vandalize. I've only ran into like about maybe 30 wacko kids and one psychotic one, whom I had to report to the Dean of Student Affairs. So.
Zan, thank you. Mike?
Yes, we do have a problem downtown, but I spent a lot of hours over the last week talking to bar owners and asking them what their opinions are, what can be done, and I think a service fee from them is ridiculous, okay? The Platteville Police Department, we have 30 officers, 5 in suit. That's a tremendous amount of law enforcement for a small community, okay? But they are all paid to do protect and serve, okay? So for them to receive an additional fee because something happens on 2nd Street, I'm sorry, they're already being paid to do that. So, and we're not bringing out more money, it's not costing more money, okay? Platteville made the choice of not having a holding cell in the new jail, okay? So now you have to haul everybody to Lancaster. Wouldn't have to do that on a regular basis if you had that facility in a new place, okay? The other thing is, talking to beer distributors, the beer distributors around here say there's a tremendous increase in volume, but it's the bar owners, they're having a less amount of money, less beer sold. So it's not downtown, it's in the house parties all over, okay? The kids have all the house parties, they got all happy and they come downtown, then sometimes we have an issue, okay? But yes, you're correct. The biggest part of the problems are coming out of the places that she said, Dubuque, Chicago, Madison, okay? Now, if we toughen up, Dubuque's toughening things up. I know a couple of guys that are in law enforcement down there. They're cracking down on this kind of stuff. So you see a fight starting, okay, 2 people starting a fight, okay? You don't stand around and wait till there's 10 or 12 people having a fight, and then there's 3 police officers watching all this happen, and then we bring in the dogs to finally quell it. You stop it right away, and if it takes excessive force, then you do it, okay? We have to set an example. There is one other thing that lends to all this. Unfortunately, there have been a lot of ridiculous tickets written in this city, okay? The one that comes to mind is a $200 fine for a man putting a cigarette on his own property, okay? And I thought that was ridiculous, so a friend of mine who's a retired police officer called and asked about it, and no, this happened. Then he also said to the police department, why didn't you write a warning? They said, we were told by the city, we write no warning tickets, we write all tickets, okay? Well, I said, what's they're writing it all on city ordinances. If you wrote on county ordinance or state ordinances, not all the money stays here. Tickets written on county or city ordinances, all the money stays here. So apparently it's a way to generate money. But we need to crack down. We don't need to pat these guys, oh, you shouldn't get in a fight anymore. A fight, okay, we charge them, period. Thank you.
Steve?
Well, 2nd Street's been around for a long time. And it's been a long time since I've been down on Second Street late at night. But I can remember back many years ago when I first moved to the community, it's always sort of been a rite of passage for a lot of UW-Platteville students. I mean, when they graduate and they come back, they still have fond memories of their time on Second Street. I think maybe, weren't you in there at one time? I think we had a conversation. We had that conversation at one
confirm nor
time.
deny that.
So, but things have changed a lot over the years. And Zan probably knows. I certainly don't know anything about it. What you said was very, very interesting, and which I wasn't aware of a lot of that. There's a lot. The thing that's changed is, as you mentioned, is that it's not all students. You know, the chancellor's been here at a couple of meetings, and he's been driving the point home that it isn't the students causing all the problems. That overall, we have a pretty good bunch of students. Sure, they have some house parties, and they get busted for that. This has been going on for a long time, and they stay at the house, and they have a few beers, and then they go down and have one more that costs a few bucks more so they can get a cheap beer. That's the way it's been for many years. But the problem is that we're having a lot of people other than students that are causing problems. Now, one of the things, and we've had a good discussion on this in the last month. Some of the bar owners came. They presented something like 24, 25 different proposals. The city council looked at them, and we all sat down, picked out our top 5, and we sort of put it together, and then we discussed it, and then we're take it back to some of the bar owners, and we're trying to come up with a new policy. So I think we're on the right direction. One of the things that I think we need to do, and we've talked about this, is tie it into licensing. Let's face it, my question I've been asking for several years is, what bars are really causing this problem? I think Dan's right when she says there are certain bars that aren't causing problems. There are certain bars I think are causing problems. When I read in the paper about the citations that are issued, and I see all these citations for open intoxicant, I'm thinking, well, who lets them walk out the bar door with a bottle of beer? I mean, I know they can stick it in their coat in the winter and probably sneak it out, but maybe what we need is more enforcement. Maybe the bar owners need to spend a little more money on their help to enforce that. Maybe what we need to do is do a better job of tracking which bars are causing the problem, and when it comes up for licensing, then we should look at that. This is what they do in Madison. If you got a bar up in Madison that's causing a problem, when it comes time for the license renewal, the police department's coming in there and saying, okay, look at this bar is causing problems. And some of them have lost their license. And I guess that's what we're going to have to do, something like that now too.
Steve, thanks. Finally, Barb.
Everything that was said, I have in my article in the paper. The only thing I will bring up that has not been mentioned is that these are businesses. And I do understand that we can control the behavior through liquor licensing, through the bar owners, bouncers, the bartenders, you name it. But these are businesses. And Steve is really correct. I was a patron of the bars many years ago when I was a student in this town. Most people have been at one time or another. And I still feel that, yes, we have to ask the bar owners, but you're not going to close Second Street. It's going to be there. It has been there. The community basically understands Second Street. The students that come to the university understand it, but they're still businesses. And the people who run and operate those businesses do whatever's asked, and they do it to the best of their ability and within financial abilities. At least that's what I found when the council has met. And they had the 20 items on their list. I could see dollars. I could see what it would cost. I could see what, and I was really, I guess, proud of the fact that the council made some decisions to bring it down to a reasonable number. I think it was 5 off the list. But they still are businesses, and they do bring money into the community. Unfortunately, sometimes it does take some time to manage where the costs are. So.
Okay, Barb, thank you. Now, the Second Street issue obviously has a lot to do, although not completely everything to do, with UW-Platteville. the parking issue, the downtown parking issue in south of Pine Street, that was a UW-Platteville issue. The city council has also had to approve the new Roundtree Commons dorm and the Bridgeway Commons dorm, which is in the process of construction right now. So I'll start with Zan with this. How would you evaluate the relationship between the city of Platteville and UW-Platteville? And I guess by that I'm asking,
You
good,
mean the
bad-
community?
Yeah, the community, right. Things
The
going
commu-
well or not.
The community, the relationship between the community and university is not that great. It's just not that great. It's like the university and then the community. It's not so much just the students, it's even the faculty and staff that works at the university. There's just not a good relationship between the two. And I think that sometimes some of the people in the community, they blow it out of proportion. First of all, you have to realize this is a college town. These are young people. They're not going to go to bed at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. They're going to be up on weekends. They're going to be doing what young people do, party. And as long as they're not vandalizing anything and then they're in the houses having parties, I don't see a problem with that. We have many students that live around us, and we don't have a problem with them, not at all. Yes, we hear a little noise, but guess what? If we would have been asleep, we wouldn't have heard it. No one makes the type of noise that just wakes somebody up out of their bed. I think there are so many students I've talked to, like in the neighborhood where we live at on Mitchell. One year, some students came in, and the first thing this neighborhood did was, okay, we're going to give them these set of rules that they have to follow. We don't want this, we don't want that. Well, I and another lady, we wanted to give them a block club party, welcoming them. They just want to go to their doors, throw these rules down their throat. The students were offended. They came across from their driveway to our driveway and said, we're good kids. We would even help the people in the community. I think if a lot of people in this community gave these kids a chance, they would do a lot of nice things, like shovel a snow, come and take people's garbage out who can't get it out, by themselves, mow some lawns. But they are not made to feel a part of this community. And especially if the people have been here for a long time, they just have that thing that this is my town. Well, your town will not thrive without the university, and that's just the bottom line.
Zan, thank you. Mike?
Right now, the community has a lot of different opinions of what's going on with the university, what they think about it. It's been here a long time. It's an important part of our community, but it also becomes a bit of a problem when things that the university does causes expense on the taxpayers in the city of Platteville, okay? One thing that, I don't know, maybe a lot of you people already know this, but that new dorm, Roundtree, that's a privatized dorm. It has nothing to do with the university, okay? It's owned by the foundation. So therefore, being a private dorm, it should have had 1.5 parking stalls for every room. All rental property, it's basically a rental property, okay? We have laws in the city that require a certain amount of parking per bedroom. We got this dorm with 640 beds and 39 parking stalls, but hey, they're exempt. No, why? It's a rental property. It's not a university dorm, okay? It's used as such, but it's owned by the foundation. It will always be owned by the foundation, and it will be used as a fundraiser once the 30-year bonds have all been paid off. So it's not the college kids all the time that are a problem, and they get lumped in the whole sum of things, okay? It's what's done by the administration or the foundation that causes problems into the city, which have created some parking issues. There's one thing that we haven't talked about at all. With our population, you look at our sign, it says 11,225, I believe it is, okay? We are only about 500 people away from having a partially paid fire department, okay? Now, you take the college kids off of that. It's not their fault they're counted in, but they have a Platteville address. They're part of our census. We're a lot smaller than that. We only send out 3,000 tax bills, not including businesses, okay? Okay, right now, according to the Census Bureau, there's 2.54 people, 2.4 people per household, okay, in all of Grant County. So what are we gonna do? How are we gonna pay for this if we have 500 more people in Platteville and maybe more students into that? We're not very far away from that. And we have to pay for a partially paid fire department. You talk about money expenditures? There's things down the road that we don't even see coming yet. So, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Steve?
Well, I came here 40 years ago. I taught 35 years at the university. I probably put out 2,000 accounting majors over 35 years that have all left Platteville and have good jobs and have fond memories of Platteville. Some of us in the council have been accused because somehow we had worked at the university, or we're too close to the university. And I submit that actually, having worked at the university and having dealt with the university administration on a lot of issues over the years, we probably challenge the administration more than somebody that doesn't have anything to do with the university, because we know that they don't always make exactly the right decision, and we're used to challenging them. As far as the students go, I think students do exactly what you tell them, what you expect of them. In other words, if it's a landlord or if it's the city or the university is upfront with your students and you tell them what you expect of them, you tell them what their behavior is, 95% of them are going to do are going to be good citizens and are going to do what they're supposed to do. I've been renting to students for 35 years. I've never had a problem with a house party ever. Why? Because when they move in, I tell them, no parties in this house. And if I hear one, I'll be over the next morning kicking you guys out of bed and clean up the yard. And you tell them once, they never have a problem. You don't have a problem with it. So as far as the students go, people that cause problems with them are people that are not setting the rules for your students. As far as the town and gown relationship, when I came here 40 years ago, people said, oh yeah, well, you're working for the university, so you're not going to have anything to do with the people downtown. Well, it took me about 2 weeks before I figured out that was a bunch of BS, okay, because I met a lot of people and I got along fine with them over the years and still do. So this town and gown stuff's been way overblown, and it's way outdated. Some people still have that concept around, but I don't think that it exists. We have a very good administration over here. The chancellor is very good at working with the city. He comes to meetings whenever he's asked to come over here and report on what's going on at the university. He does an excellent job of keeping the city informed about what's going on, what the plans are at the university, asking us if we have any problems. I don't think we could ask for a better chancellor that's more concerned about the relationship between the city and the university. A lot of people complained about Roundtree dorm. Well, first off, even though the foundation is a separate nonprofit organization, a separate entity, they report to everybody that's hired, works at the university, reports to the chancellor. So it isn't like these guys are sort of out in the field by themselves. It's all part of the same thing. They are separate from the standpoint that it's a separate corporation and it's a nonprofit organization. That little piece of property that we put up over there last year contributes $100,000 every year to the city of Platteville, okay? They write a check every year. In the future, every year they're going to write that check, and in the future that check's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, okay? Now, people said, well, you didn't have to play around, you didn't have to follow rules in parking. Look what the university did. They increased the parking lot on J Street. They took down houses. They put in more parking. They put in more parking down below. They got a shuttle that's running all over town. Everybody sees this shuttle that they put up to keep students from driving their cars so much. You go over around Roundtree, there's no parking problem over there. There's more empty places to park there than there ever have been. The university, we asked the university, we said, okay, you don't have to put the parking lot right there, but we need to make sure there's plenty of parking on campus. They did exactly what they were asked to do. And we got a good dorm out of it, and we got some good revenue out of it. I'd like to have more revenue like that coming in.
Steve,
Then, if we had that revenue coming in, source of revenue, maybe we wouldn't have to look so hard at reducing some operating expenses.
Steve, thank you. Barb?
Well, I believe in the student. I was a student and I believe in the student. We have a home across the street, 5 students. All I have to do is put a note on the door and they change their behavior. Only once did my son have to go and knock on the door because I wasn't allowed to do it. And that was 5 years ago. And, I got parked in once, put a note on the door, and they moved their vehicle. Now, I work and drive around Roundtree Commons. No, I have had no problem with students. They've asked to park in my parking lot. I've said I've only got a certain number of parking spots and I can't afford to lose them. They do park in other areas. They know how far to walk. And I think the students also bring money to the community. I think we need our students. They bring cash to the businesses. They bring opportunities for people to work, basically. You got to protect your work environment. And I've told people, you need your students. I don't think we have enough. In the general population, we wouldn't have enough people to maintain all the businesses we have on Main Street or other parts of the community. So I believe in our students. I think they're good people, like Zan said. I think it was Zan. The landlords should self-police, and if not, the neighbors can. That was brought up before. And good neighbors will help with policing with students. Thank you.
Barb, thanks. Mike?
Thank you, Steve. I agree. The vast majority of students are pretty good kids, and we don't have trouble with them. The difficulties are normal problems when you have growth, and you have to find a way to deal with it. Most students aren't a problem, but some are, and as others have said, there are ways that can be addressed. There are a couple things here about this relationship. I think generally speaking, it's a pretty good one. The chancellor has been wonderfully responsive. He views us as partners looking for places where we have mutual beneficial relationships. Roundtree Commons was an example. I think everyone is familiar with the university's desire to put an innovation center in somewhere we've had some difficulty making that happen, but they're still very interested in doing that. And when that happens, that will also contribute to funding the services of this town. As Steve indicated, they didn't get that for nothing. In fact, the chancellor himself said, we would like to help contribute to the city because we know that the state of Wisconsin doesn't give anywhere near as much in payments in lieu of taxes for the problems that a university brings to a town. And so he's made it part of his mission, I think, to try to help the city as it deals with this growth. And he's to be commended for that. He's I think, the right guy at the right time for the university. Clearly, we'd be a hugely different town if we didn't have the university, if we didn't have the students here, if we didn't have the faculty and staff buying cars and shopping and doing so on. And the university's not going anywhere, it's growing, and that gives us an opportunity like very few communities in the nation have. I've said before, and this is metaphorical, but it's probably somewhat true, there are 4,000 communities in the United States that would kill to have our problems right now, which is growth that we have to manage instead of decay and decline, which a lot of communities are going through right now. And so our job as a city council is to take advantage of that growth and make it pay off for everybody and make this a better place as a result of it. There are a couple of things that were indicated that the university was only required to provide 39 spaces for that residence hall. That's not true. They were required to provide 450 spaces, and they did do that. And in fact, the number of cars that ended up showing up were far less than the 450 they were required to provide, partly, I think, because they indicated they'd get kids around campus with a shuttle, and kids didn't bring that. The other thing is, not long after I became a city council member, I asked the city manager what the limit was on population where we would be required to go to a paid fire department, and he said there isn't one, that there is no limit. You can choose to do that, but you don't have to. And And I look at this prospect of having a paid fire department, and I think to myself, my gosh, why would we want to do that? We have one of the greatest fire departments you could ever hope for. And they take care of the students every bit as well as they take care of everyone else. When the SIGTAWs had a fire about 3 years ago, it was my unhappy duty to be the advisor at the time. And so I was over there poking through the wreckage after the fire. Those firemen got there at 1 a.m. I don't know what they were doing, but I'm sure they were sleeping. And they got it out before that whole building went. And they were walking around with pans and waste baskets catching the drips so it wouldn't damage the floors below. I don't know what you have to pay for service like that. We get it for nothing. And I don't think that we're having to head any time toward a paid department. And I certainly hope we don't have to do that. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, thank you. We have a lot of great questions that are not going to get asked tonight because we are trying to make sure people can see the last round of NCAA games tonight. So we have 2 more questions remaining. The first one is pretty open-ended, I guess, and I believe it's Mike's turn to start. And the question is there an issue that has not come up tonight or possibly hasn't come up at all during the campaign that you feel strongly about? And if that is the case, what's your take on it? So we'll start with Mike.
Thank you. Well, I had a problem with finding out about one of our TIFs that's listed as a blighted area. So I did a bunch of investigating in it, and I found out that you can have a blighted area. It's such a broad description. You can blight anything. You could probably blight my home if you wanted my home, okay? They've done a block up by the library, that whole block, and I said, why is that listed as a blighted area and a TIF area? Because then you can do more things to it. And they said, anything can be blighted. The city of downtown can be considered blighted because the stores don't have the square footage in the frontal space anymore like new stores have to have. So basically they can do anything they want to with that TIF. The city paid $12,000 just recently for a survey, which I think we spend an awful lot of money on surveys around here. To have some organization come in and go over that TIF area with them and give them an idea of what they should do with it or how they can make it work. I think that the city probably has enough people around here that they bring the TIFs into play, they look at them, they probably should know how to manage part of that themselves without spending a lot of money on all these surveys they do. A lot of money has been spent in the past on many surveys, which I can't tell you which ones they were, and nothing's been done. So we talk about conserving money for the city. And I'll go back to the point that I made, that this $2 million grant that I just found out about, the city's not getting this money from somebody else. They're actually creating a grant and then giving the money to the cheese factory. So I assume they're borrowing this money. We don't have taxpayer base to give away $1 million. And if it's on a grant, it's going to be non-returnable. So it's very interesting how this is going to play out. Thank you.
Okay, Steve.
Well, a grant is, just so you know, a grant, you write a grant for a specific purpose. So we write a grant, we might ask the state of Wisconsin, will you contribute some money to this particular purpose? It's not the city's money, the city does it, we're asking somebody else to help us out. So it really doesn't have anything to do with the city. So that really doesn't do it. As far as TIFs go, and I'm with you there, I think one of the things that we haven't talked about, and the reason we don't probably talk about it, is because it's something that for most of us is pretty difficult to understand. And on one of it that I know as far as TIFs and how do they work and what do they do. I can tell you a couple things is that it's the main economic force that we have in the state for development is the law associated with TIFs on it. And we had a very nice, for people that want more information, we had a nice presentation that was laid out a couple weeks ago. And one of the issues that's going to face the city, and I don't think we can get into it all tonight, is that if we want to have continued growth, is how are we going to pay for that continued growth? We hear a lot of things about as far as money being wasted with the city. I'm with you there. I'm with you there. When it comes time to sit down with and look at that budget, I'm the guy that loves to look down at those numbers and do the comparison to last year and look at the comparison and ask ourselves, why are we spending that money? I think there's ways that we can save money, and I'd be the first to agree with you that we need to do a better job in that.
Steve, thank you. Barb?
It's an interesting question. Just about everything that I think about has been said. I looked at my article in the paper, Steve, that you so generously wrote for me, and I still feel that the employees need to be treated back to the original 40 hours, City Hall open. I certainly agree with Steve on reevaluating the budget. I enjoyed listening to the work sessions, that type of thing. The questions should continue to come from the community. The only other area that I would like to see more of is to use the skills we have available. Our Chamber of Commerce, I see many of the administrators sitting in our audience today, and they're used to being used to be involved in the grant writing experience. They're used to be involved in managing our community and all its resources, and that area has not been addressed here today. But I really believe in our chamber. That would be one question I'd like to answer, as I do believe in our chamber.
Okay, Mike?
Thank you. One thing we haven't talked about too much, although Steve kind of alluded to it, is our newest addition to our industry park, Emmy Roth Case, which is the cheese company. Huge facility, lots of tax base, up to 60 jobs, and they're not the $8 an hour jobs that may have been mentioned. They are $17 an hour jobs with benefits. L&M Corrugated, which is one of our industrial park tenants out there, sells boxes to Emmy Case. We're kind of hopeful that they're locating their plant here is going to have some helpful benefits for L&M. We have reason to believe that Emmy Roth Case will result in other spin-offs coming here. So it's not just one business. There are multiplier effects that come from that. We could bring in jobs that are low wage, no benefit. We're trying to bring in good jobs with high benefits, and we've done that with Emmy Roth Case. You don't do that by just giving people an acre here and an acre there. You need to have a major industrial facility to do that kind of thing, because that's what businesses are looking for. You need very, very good landscape arrangements, topographical arrangements, good utilities, and so on. And that's what we have out there. That area is zoned for manufacturing. You can't put a manufacturing facility where it's zoned business. You wouldn't want to put a manufacturing facility next to Menards. You wouldn't want to put them next to Walgreens. In other words, there's a zoning that controls that. And so people wonder why we can't put some of these things some places. Well, that's why. And I think that's a good thing that we have in town. Our zoning has been pretty effective at isolating a lot of development away from residential areas. That's the beauty of the whole Menards corridor, is that all that development out there is impinging on no one's home life or residential areas. And the same thing with the industrial park. And we've had people looking for expansion of industrial park land, and they'll do a good job in making sure that's zoned the same kind of way, so that it provides us for the opportunity to get really good businesses with really good jobs here that'll pay really high tax rates with the tax base that they generate, not high tax rates, but certainly provide a lot more revenue for us. And in the long run, that's how you grow a community, and that's how you maintain it. And I'm absolutely in favor of continuing to do that kind of thing. We've got to do that stuff. Otherwise, we're going to sit here and decay away, and that's not reasonable.
Thanks, Mike. Finally, Zan.
I'll go back to Second Street. I think that Second Street should be dealt with in a way that it's viable for students to be there. The students, they like Second Street. Second Street is like people lose liquor licenses. There will be a declining in students enrolling in school here. They've come to me and said that. They enjoy that as a part and experience of coming to college. The only thing I think that needs to happen is for each bar owner to take responsibility for the immorality and the illegality that goes on in their place.
Thank you. So we have reached the last question. Before we do that, I'll just remind voters of a couple of things. First off, anyone who lives in the city can vote for one of the at-large positions. Only people who live in District 1, and that would be the northeast side, basically, of Platteville, can vote for one of these two. In addition to that, there is a Supreme Court race, and there is also a Superintendent of Public Instruction race. Those are both on the ballot on April 2nd. Voters except those in District 3, and that's the university area, vote at the National Guard Armory on North Water Street. District 3 voters, you can vote at the Pioneer Student Center. The polls will be open on April 2nd from 7 in the morning until 8 in the evening. And on the chance you might be out of town, you can vote, get an absentee ballot in the city clerk's office next week. And so we have reached the final question. It's always my favorite question to ask when I interview candidates. And we'll start with Steve and go back this direction. The last question is, why should people vote for you for the city council?
Exactly. Why should they hire me? Just like you said.
Or rehire?
Or rehire me. Okay. Well, yeah, I want to thank everybody for turning out. I've enjoyed this tonight, and I don't know if you can tell, but I'm passionate about this stuff. I love the city of Platteville. I'm passionate about what's going to happen here. I think there are good things that have happened in the last several years, and I think it's just going to get better and better. Why should you? I've been on the city council for 6 years. I enjoyed it. I'll have to admit, the first year or so, it was sort of a learning experience, which anybody would go through. But I think I've learned a few lessons. I have, over that period of time, and I think you can ask anybody in the city council, if somebody says, how are we going to save money? I'm the first guy that's looking at the way we can save money. I believe in holding the property taxes down. I think we need to, and we've been successful at it. Over the 6 years that I've been on the city council, property taxes haven't gone up. In fact, they've gone down. Now, you can argue about some of it's revaluation, but certainly a good portion of it is not revaluation. It's because we've been watching the bottom line. We've had strong economic development. Look at some of the things that have just happened in the last year at the city of Platteville. We put up Roundtree Commons over there, added $100,000 to budget. There's been 2 good-sized apartment complexes. People have been complaining for years about affordable housing in the city of Platteville. Okay, what's going to happen? And one of the reasons with affordable housing is that because of the demand by the students, it's somebody can buy a house and turn around and pay a good dollar amount for that and rent it out, and it's a good investment. Well, what you're going to see is going to happen, and I think it's already starting to happen with some of these new, very nice units coming on it. Some of the older houses are just not going to be renting out. And you know what that's going to mean? It's going to turn them back to single-unit families. Some people they're going to be able to buy them. The values of them are going to go down. People are going to be able to buy them. They're going to be able to rehab them, and I think they're going to become some family houses. So I think we're going to, the developments are going to, and this is what we've been trying to do. Developments are going to result in more affordable housing. One thing we haven't mentioned is that we have a very strong financial picture here in Platteville. Last city council meeting, we approved the sale of some bonds, and the people that sell our bonds came in and they did a report. And what did they say about the city? Strong financial management plan. We have excellent rating. We got one of the best ratings we can. We get good rates when we go out and borrow money. That's because we've got a strong financial plan. It's because the people on the council have been aiming to make sure that that happens. We have the key issue that's going to come up with this next election that I think me and my worthy opponents disagree, really comes down to the idea of operating expenses. I can't at this time support increasing the hours of employment from 37 to 40. I don't believe that we've had complaints from the citizens that services have been reduced. I explained earlier that when you look at the way to reduce money, you only have so many options. We took the option, and when I say we, I mean all 7 members of the city council 2 years ago took the option that we thought was the best, would create the less harm for the fewest number of people. In a perfect world, it would be nice if we didn't have to worry about making these tough decisions. But let's face it, it doesn't happen that way. I have been somebody that looks at a decision, work on making those tough decisions, and I'll stand by them. So I hope people will vote for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mike, why should people vote for you for city council?
Good question. Well, first off, I'd like to bring a couple little quick things back, and then we'll get to that. Talking about the paid fire department, I talked to people in the fire department that I assumed knew what they were talking about, and they're the ones that gave me the information that said that within 500 people of that, okay? The other thing is wages. On 2 occasions now, I've seen advertised for jobs for the new cheese factory at $8 an hour, okay? So, yes, apparently there are $8 an hour jobs out there, all right? Why should you vote for me? I've lived in Platteville for many, many years. I've been on some other boards. I've enjoyed it. I'm now retired, have a little more time, because the city council job takes a lot of time. I've learned a lot in the last few months, and I have a whole lot more to learn. But I'd like to think that I bring a bit of opinion to the city council than what's already here. One thing I'll guarantee you, you won't see me insulting anyone that comes here, okay? That first and foremost. So I'd like to welcome everybody in front of the council, and feel free and enjoy your comments when you come to the council. I think that I have a lot of experience in just being a citizen here, looking to see what's happened over all the years, what haven't happened, what we'd like to have happen. I hope I can add to the continuing production in this city is getting better. And if we have, and I don't understand where they talk about, we brought a lot of jobs into Platteville, but they're all $8 an hour jobs. Walmart pays minimum wage. Menards pays minimum wage. They're great jobs for part-time work. Okay, the people in Walmart that were in the old store are grandfathered in at 28 hours as full-time. The new people in the Walmart have 32 hours is considered full-time. So there's a lot of different things there that are involved, and yeah, we'd like to have a lot more jobs. The $17 an hour job that Mike talked about is what Mr. Ross said the average earnings were for the facility. Well, anybody knows, first all and foremost, right now, benefit packages run from 48 to 52% of the total package, okay? Now, if you listen to what Mr. Ross said, I wasn't in that meeting, but I read his quote in the paper, and it said the average. So that means you take the owner's cut out of there each year. You take his management staff, his supervisory staff, his technical staff. Now the people that are actually doing all the on-hands things, they're a whole lot less money. Thank you.
Zan,
I think that you should vote for me because I bring a different perspective to the council. I'm a person that has great vastness and diversity and versatility. The face of Platteville is changing rapidly. We need a council person such as myself that understands all people, can talk to all people, young, old, different races. Also, bringing in something that's fun for the students, like the things that go on in the park. Students don't attend basically because they are boring to them. The music in the park, bringing a new flavor, some jazz, some pizzazz into the area where young people will come. When you go to the park, to the parks and recreation, there are no young people there. Maybe the little ones that have come with their parents running around. The people, younger people here would like to hear something else in music. They would like to see something else, more entertainment-wise. Even older people, they would like to hear something other than a banjo type of music, maybe something like the Beach Boys or something like that for some of the baby boomers. A few, like jazz concerts, maybe in the theater. I would like to bring happiness within the community, be that person that's out there to listen to everyone. And, everything that they think or feel would be a concern of mine. I would also be a council person that would have a special line, and have it open. Whereas if they have any concerns, they can call me. I would like to be the hands-on type of person. Nothing is too minute for me to listen to. Thank you for listening to me. I hope you guys vote for me.
Mike, why should people vote for you for city council?
One of the advantages of seeing candidates who've served is you know what they stand for, you know what they do, you know what they've done, and you have a pretty good idea what they're likely to do in the future. I have a record, I'm proud of it. I think we have weathered a really significant storm here, and we've taken advantage of the opportunities that we've had available to us. We have done all kinds of things over the last few years here to try to improve what's going on in this town. I think we've largely, for the most part, succeeded in doing that. I brought some visual aids here that kind of summarize what I think has happened. Over the last 3 years, growth is up. Over the last 3 years, our tax base is up. Over the last 3 years, jobs up. Taxes, not up. Revenue sources, not out of the taxpayer's pocket. We're getting it from other places. School district enrollment, improving. And that's part of the housing initiatives that we've done. If we can open up some more houses in town and get more families here, we're going to find improvements in the school district enrollment and ultimately in their ability to get state aid. Wasteful spending, we've cut it. Non-borrowed capital expenditures, up 50%. You want to know where that money we saved went? We put it into capital, we're putting it into roads, and we're not borrowing it. If that record seems like something you'd like to consider, then I would say vote for me. If you would like something else, then you'll have to find it in another candidate. Thank you.
Finally, Barb, why should people vote for you?
Well, I am at a disadvantage. This is my first opportunity to run for office. I plan to bring a new perspective. I do have other political positions that I've held over the years where we had to deal with tax base and to make decisions on how much tax we're going to put on the property tax bills. I talk to people every day in my business, and every day people who live all over southwest Wisconsin. And so I know what's happening in other towns. Being brand new, asking some hard questions of our current council members would be a great opportunity to help with change. And I would like to be part of that experience. So please vote for me.
All right. That concludes the forum tonight. I would like to thank the Platteville Area Chamber of Commerce. They are the providers of the refreshments. Thanks to the Main Street program for helping us with this. Thanks to the city of Platteville, particularly Angie Donovan, for all of your roles in putting on tonight's candidate forum. Candidates, as well as those of you in the audience who are able to stay, are invited to stay afterwards because there's still refreshments still over there, among other things. You could possibly ask the candidates questions that didn't come up tonight. I would also like to remind those here and those watching on TV that the candidate forum can be viewed on the city's YouTube channel, which is Platteville WISC, all of next week. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for watching. And make sure you cast an informed vote April 2nd. Good night.
Thank you, Steve.
Well, I like your visual arts. That was